Hello, and welcome to the journey of grief, becoming us without them. And today I've invited a guest to talk to us about grief, Dr. Marlon Rollins, a clinical licensed counselor with 20 years of experience in the behavioral health industry. He served as the COO and CEO of some of the largest behavioral health organizations and rehab centers in California. Dr. Rollins is a speaker and author of Healing the Impoverished Mind, and his newly released book is called Resilience Between Pain and Purpose. He is also an ordained minister who grew up in Indiana. He donated a kidney to his pastor in 2013, and he is currently the Chief Clinical Officer for Hollywood Detox in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
So welcome, Marlon. It's great to have you, and I
great to
can't
join
wait to
you.
hear what you're going to teach us about grief and how it relates to the work that you do.
Thank you so much
Without
again for
further
having
ado,
me. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here, and I just appreciate you creating this space to talk about a topic that so many people struggle with, and um, it's not going anywhere. But it really is a painful experience when you have a connection with a loved one that's gone on, and it feels like things are unfinished. Let's say that. Um, People struggling with kind of closure. It's been a long time thing that I've seen in my practice, in my field, and then my own lived experience with loss. Um, just leaves you with a lot of questions, a lot of the big why questions for those that are still here struggling to kind of find new footing. And, sometimes just wanting it to be over with, right? Just so that's what I want to talk today is like, how do you get through it? How did I get through it? I'll show you my own personal experience. Um, what have I seen that has worked? What are the expectations? It's a crisis that happens in our nervous system, and so it's a quiet trauma. And I think the culture that we live in today doesn't really allow us to grieve properly. Um, if you work a job, you get the 3 days bereavement kind of thing. And and then it's like that's it, and then you're back to life again. Mm, so that's kind of been the standard, and like, oh, so I'm supposed to do this in 3 days, and that's then go back to just living life again, like everything is okay. So that's the experience of it. And that we've set. So the culture doesn't allow us to really heal and recalibrate ourselves, I think is a good word. And people don't know how to do it. Um, so that's kind of my overview, and anything that I can share, about my own experience, I will share with you, and then kind of dive deeper if as you have questions that you think your audience would appreciate hearing, I can elaborate a little bit more on.
so kind of take us on the journey of how grief brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, and I think that's a good hand gesture, brought me to where I am now. And Um, I'm a lost survivor of my sister, Amber Rose Rollins, who died by suicide in December 31st, 2013. And,
Mm.
as she's my older sister by 2 years. It was just us growing up together. She was my first babysitter, right? And so her and I kind of both in the healthcare field, imagine this one day that her and I would both team up as, caretakers. She would be the nurse and I would be the therapist, and we would, help people together. That was kind of the dream. And we were, growing up in a little small town called Muncie, Indiana, and we always had big dreams of, doing greater things and helping more people and trying to change our kind of living circumstances that we grew up in because they weren't the best. And so she's had success as a nurse and had her own home healthcare business. It was called Serenity Home Healthcare. She was a super proud to be a nurse and had the nursing license plate and all of the stuff that nurses who live that life love to do. And And, I was Dr. Rollins. She was super proud of me as her brother. And for a time before she passed, we had an opportunity to work in the same hospital. And she was on a transitional care unit. So her job was to help people who were transitioning either at end of life or they had experienced some kind of trauma and they were in a recovery phase. So she did that job diligently, and she was that nurse who was unafraid of whatever it smelled like, whatever it looked like. She would be the person that would go in and take care of you and make you still retain your dignity, as your body might be failing in some kind of way. And so she had that special gift. Um, and she went through some personal crisis in her own life. And I'm so grateful for that time that I had with her. I worked in the emergency room at the time, and I would see patients who were coming in for, they're also a mental health crisis, right? In the emergency room, fast-paced environment. A lot of times these were individuals who the emergency doctors didn't want to see, right? They were like, oh, this is not a real crisis. But yeah, we're talking about somebody who's had maybe a suicide attempt, they've cut themselves. Um, again, I will say that, all the stuff I'm talking about, I want to give a disclaimer about, some of this is pretty heavy stuff when we talk about suicide, self-harm, and mental health issues. And there's a lot of stigma behind it too. And part of my personal mission is to kind of undo and fight into that stigma because it's deadly. And as my sister went through her personal crisis as a nurse and unable to be the nurse that she had lived to be and worked to be and was, that stigma of being mentally unable to overcome um, a diagnosis, struggling with an addiction and going through the adversity of life, if you will, as a nurse, she ended up ending her life, which was a terrifying event for myself, who at the time was, like I said, a doctor, a therapist. So here I am helping all these people in this hospital, going to bedside, doing clinical assessments, trying to get people connected into the psychiatric hospital or connected to an appointment so they could get help, get them out of the emergency department. But here, my sister, she falls away and falls through the gaps of the behavioral health, mental health system, right? Feeling like it was easier to end her life than to continue to try to fight to get help, right? And I do mean fight to get help because getting help is hard. And I'd say access to just healthcare, period, is difficult to navigate financially, getting the treatment that you want, making sure you get a provider that's going to be fair to you. So the fear of living um, started to outweigh the fear of dying, and she did not see her worth in one of her darker places. So it was that depression and anxiety that took her away. Again, I will underscore that our healthcare providers are at higher risk for suicide. Our physicians are at higher risk for suicide. They take care of everyone else but themselves. So from a personal standpoint, that kind of gave me a mission after I went through the own traumatic, which I can share with you, like how that impacted me. Like, again, I had mentioned earlier about kind of taking time off for work. I was a crisis director when she died and a therapist. So there was at a hospital. So there wasn't a take off a day from work and like I had to go back and look at every nurse. And every nurse reminded of my sister wearing the scrubs. And every day I was dealing with somebody who was, in the midst of wanting to end their life. And that too would freeze me up from my work. I was like, I couldn't read the word. I couldn't hear the word without tears or a numbness. Just being swept away, right? And and the inner critic of me saying to myself, well, I'm supposed to know this, and what did I miss? And it's what did I do wrong, and how come? As so and at the same time, I'm a brother, so I'm tied to her emotionally, my nervous system since a kid, right? It's not like I
Yeah.
step out of it and become like this therapist. And I think people who have lost loved ones to suicide and might be in the field of some sort, we forget how just the rhythm of who we are tied to these people, and the complexity that goes along with suicide death in particular feels like a huge betrayal. You know, if you could imagine for a moment that, say, somebody that you loved was murdered, somebody that you loved was murdered, and you want justice. You're angry at the person that killed your loved one, right? You want something to happen. You want them to face a sentence, you know, but here we've got the person that you love killing themselves. So you're angry at that person for taking away the person that you loved. You know, I became angry at the healthcare system. I was angry at um, you know, the stigma of mental health. It became kind of my enemy of like, how do I fix this? How do I make this better? Um, because these things are wrong, they're flawed. This shouldn't have happened, right? Um, so that kind of stirred my mission, if you will, on a personal level to um, and a professional level to say, I want to be in a position to where I can make a difference and do something different in this space. So that kind of catapulted, you know, a catalyst of saying I could not avoid, I couldn't shrink away because it was in my face every day. So um, I decided to face it. Instead of the bouncing back, I bounced forward and through it to make a difference for other people. And so when I started telling my sister's story, when it came to helping other people who had stigma about mental health and who were healthcare providers, or even other clients, or if I did a speaking engagement or something like that, just to talk about it, they would say thank you. They would be like, I know someone, I lost someone, we never talk about it in our family. We feel so ashamed of it. And so that compelled me to train and learn how to be a COO and then CEO. I came out to California and have been out here for the last about 12 years now, um, and have been in an executive level of helping psychiatric hospitals, different teams, telling my story, helping people pay attention to these kind of issues that come up, trying to be a purpose-driven, not trying to be, but being a purpose-driven leader and with passion and intention, not just, this is not about the bottom line. This is about people's lives and how do we create change in our organization to, make the system that we're in better, right? And so that's kind of what it's been, and that way I felt as though my sister's life wasn't in vain, that her story didn't have to end. I could pick up her purpose and add it on to my own. And so I feel as though she stays with me that way, is that there's power in her spirit, that though it was painful, I add purpose through it because I'm living here, walking, breathing, able to say something and speak on her behalf of the things that she in her flesh was, quieting and sitting in her pain. And um, so it gives me a way to connect and to create change. And, and everybody's a little different, and I'm grateful that I'm in a position that I can, but it was something I also sought out, you know. Um, So I've, worked on the steering committee for the National Lifeline of Suicide Prevention. I've, served in Zero Suicide Committee. I've been on United Suicide Survivors, which is a loss survival support group that does suicide training all over the country. I've been to Europe speaking the Zero Suicide Initiative. And learning more about different systems and what's worked and what hasn't worked, and and how come suicide rates are continuing to rise, right? So those are places that I've kind of leaned into, and I started writing books so that I could reach more people about this, other than just being a CEO executive, um, which I'm grateful for because, I'd say systems that I worked are better, and stronger and helping people thrive in their, but I realized that I don't want to stop there. So, so hence comes on talking to people like you just to have a platform and then, creating these books to spread the word of what this looks like so people know what to do because, um, especially in any kind of death, it can be so unexpected. Tragedies just kind of leave you in your, even leave you in the dust and you don't know how to bounce back for it because your nervous system is telling you just to stay afraid. And
Right.
so I work with a lot of clients who deal with grief of all kinds and specifically, work around suicide prevention
Mm.
um, and helps loss survivors, also find agency because this is not work we do by ourselves, that's for sure.
So let's kind of separate um, Dr. Marlon Rollins from. So I read your book, and
Okay.
there's a lot of trauma and grief in that story.
Hmm.
And then another big old dollop when your sister
Hmm.
committed suicide. So they tell us we need to give ourselves time to grieve and not necessarily launch a crusade to try to outrun the pain.
Right, right.
Um, and yet, because you are in this field and you are who you are and you have your background, it's just a natural outgrowth of what you already were doing and who you already are to do all of these awesome things. But let's talk about, did you set aside some time for Marlon, the guy whose sister just committed suicide, to be just Marlon, the guy who's being run over by a steam shovel?
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly the best question to ask, right? So the humanity of all of this. And it was harder for me to take off of that kind of role, if you will. And but I couldn't ignore it. I had to sit with myself on a lot of levels, spiritually, emotionally. And thank you for taking time with the book. It means a lot to me. That book itself was a form of sitting with it, right? To write it so honestly and openly and transparently was a form of therapy for me. Like that book was for me more than anyone else, So that in itself was. And I also went to therapy and did all the things that you should do in that regard is to talk about all the stuff that happened in that book, the trauma, the things that we grew up through, the things that had happened up leading up to her suicide. And then, I carried on, I think, in California, and I get into my second book. I don't know if you saw the second book, but the part that I really reached deeper into in the second book is this idea that, I was out fixing all of these healthcare systems, fixing all of this stuff. I was the fixer. I wanted to make it better, but I was not tending to myself, enough, right? It's like I just kind of had the glue holding the pieces together, that fear of avoidance, of feeling loved and abandoned and not good enough. Um, it's kind of like you put on the Superman cape, right? And you just kind of go and you fly and it feels like this is great, but then you just notice like something don't feel right. And so I went to therapy, um, again, since I've been in California, and I had this great, great friend of mine, and who sadly passed away just a couple of years ago, well, this year, so which kind of added to that. But um, the therapist, her name is Gina Tabrizi. I remember going to like a session with her, and we were doing like a trauma kind of therapy, and I was learning it, and they were like, let's do it. I want you to experience it. And so I remember going in like a circle with the other therapists, and we were doing this, and all of this came up, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're ready for to really process this. So I start processing it and I'm crying and, I'm like speaking to my inner child and all this and I remember Gina saying in behind me, um, she says, he doesn't get to do this. He doesn't get to do this, everybody. So while I'm in the middle of this, doing the work, almost kind of cathartic space, I hear that sentence and it felt like it just gave me more permission to process deeper, right? Because I was like, oh, you're right. I don't have to be Dr. Marlon Rollins. This is just Marlon, the little boy who has felt uncared for and he's lost, a sister and he's blamed himself and he doesn't feel loved. And, so I could just pour all of that out and then reprocess, like through telling myself the truth, which I talk about in the first book, is being in a loving circle, being loving people, and then telling yourself the truth, right? Not the guilt and beating yourself up about something, but sitting with the reality. And reality was like, this was not my fault. And, and I continue to reach out to the community of loss survivors and the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention and other groups. Like I'm on a group that I go to every week called Morning Glory, where I just get to be and we talk about the experience of suicide loss and what we're feeling and what's come up for us. So I've realized like that is more powerful than anything else, beyond the titles, beyond the role of CEO or whatever, the humanity of who you are and being able to show that vulnerability is more powerful than anything. And I'd say, particularly for men, because we don't have a lot of good examples of that, we're told the opposite, that you're not, manly, the kind of the idea of, we've all probably heard it somewhere on a TV show, if not experienced ourselves, which is, men don't cry, or I only saw my dad cry one time, when the dog died my whole life. And somehow that becomes honorable, right? Like, oh, he never cried, like, wait a minute. That's not a good thing, um, that men don't cry. That's not a badge of honor, if you will. But in our
Like
mentality,
my dad only showed up one time in my whole life. It was so cool.
right,
It's like
right,
something to
so
brag about.
yeah, exactly. So we've got these wrong ideas, and we really do get programmed into them. Like, I don't, and we prevent ourselves from actually being human. So stuff like that interferes with the grief process, right? Instead of sadness in particular for men, and even for me, instead of actually being sad about something, we'll go with anger because anger is more socially acceptable, right? Even drinking, might be more socially acceptable than crying. Right. It's like, hey, you're drinking a lot. It's like, yeah, dealing with stuff. And like, oh, okay, whatever. I heard a guy was talking about
Don't
how,
talk about it. Let me buy you another drink. Just don't
right.
talk about it.
Yeah, just don't talk about it. Like, okay, you wanted a drink? Yeah, yeah. That's there was like this idea that even from some cultures, men will say, never trust a guy who doesn't drink. Right. So it's the idea that you're actually more trustworthy drinking alcohol, right? So the problem is if you take sadness and you throw in alcohol and you throw in anger, you end up with a very destructive person. And you do see higher rates of suicide and alcohol use among men. I've seen it. I've worked in these treatment centers, for many, many years. So you see the pain and the men not having permission to really express what they've been through, whether it's abuse or loss or grief or pain. There's just not a place to process that. Um, so there's a tendency to cover it up. So for me, it was about, yeah, being vulnerable and realizing that vulnerability was the real superpower for me, because in that, in my own nervous system, facing that, the pain, processing the pain and actually using it to drive, it allowed me to come back to myself, value myself, and then be able to grow. And that's why I wrote the second book, Resilience Between Pain and Purpose, looking at kind of more metaphysically and energetically of how do we use our emotional energy that is absolutely valid and right to show up with that. But the absence of it, we don't express how we feel. We don't use it. it shows up somewhere in our relationships, in our physical body, in our bad habits. It's there. So grief kind of has that impact, that loss. The loss is the loss, but the reaction to it is the grief, right? So you have to be able to do something with that, and doing the proper thing is key to make sure that it is aligned with what's needed in the body and in the expression of that emotion. And it calls for sadness. It calls for kind of that reconfiguration. Instead, what men do is we go to the gym, right? We go, instead of emotional, we go physical because it makes more sense. So we just get that dopamine hit of and the whole cortisol and get the adrenaline up, and that becomes our way to deal with everything painful. Sometimes it is the bottle, sometimes it's both, but we avoid the emotional part of it. So that's where grief can turn into something really destructive, right? When it's not expressed the way that it should be and allowed to be and talked to and nurtured to in the right way.
Yeah, in my work at the Salvation Army Rehabilitation Center, I saw so many men, and at the root of their collapse when they fell in love with drugs or alcohol was the loss of a significant person. It was often a grandparent, if they had a very complicated family and none of their needs were getting met, and that one loving grandparent that was their island in the middle
Mhm.
of the storm. And then when they die, they just collapse.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's a great example because we're looking for something to soothe our nervous system, right? To replace that person of comfort, of safety, of trust. And the thing is, we may not even be aware of how valuable this person is to us when they're with us, right? So, and that's why when they leave, there can be this sense of like, I never really appreciated her or them the way that I should have. I had no idea they meant so much to me, right? But then we go look for something else, another person, another habit, drugs, alcohol, chronic work, whatever it is. We try to find something to give us that control back or soothe us, to replace that uncertainty that comes up in our nervous system, right? And when we shame ourselves behind it, again, our thoughts are incredibly powerful, right? And feelings don't make a lot of sense. they 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 just, and they're not really supposed to, right? Emotions are a form of energy, as the work that I do in neuroscience and brain health really kind of signals to that that's what emotions are. They're absolutely valid, but they're not always true. And what I mean is they don't always tell us the truth about the situation. We have a tendency to misinterpret. It's like, just be sad. Just be the emotion of what it is. Don't judge it, right? Because I have a lot of guys who will start to judge it. Like, no, you can be sad without saying that you're not good enough, right? Like, because the truth is you are good enough and you can still be sad, right? You can actually allow yourself to feel a negative feeling without calling a negative thought about that, because the grief actually is a symbol of the love that you've had with this person, and the power of that love is simply what that is, and you're missing that connection. But it's not your flawed, right? It's just you miss this person who has meant this much to you. So while we're
Yeah.
living, my hope is that people can understand how to love and make those connections with people, value them stronger, more consciously, right? And process themselves through out of the grief into more grace.
Sounds like your group that you do regularly is a perfect example of that. It's a place where, you can be fully known and still fully loved in all your parts. People
Yep.
get you. You don't have to explain. They know exactly what you're talking about. So you just get to leak all over the place, and
Yeah.
nobody vomits and runs.
Right.
And that it's hard for people to find that. I firmly believe that that's what 12-step meetings are supposed to do. Supposed to be a place where people get you and
Hmm.
you can form some connections, and you got to find the people that have been at it longer and a little more safer, and their
Yeah.
nervous systems are a little more stable. But there are those old timers who really have learned to be relational and connect to people instead of alcohol, that can model that for you. So when
Yeah.
people go to inpatient, I think that's what happens. They form those bonds with the people that they're there with, and they don't realize it's not the 12 steps or I'm sure that all those hundreds of men that I worked with at the Salvation Army don't remember one thing I taught them, maybe some of my corny jokes.
Hmm.
But if they have stayed in touch with each other and continued those relationships, I still hear from them. They'll tell me, oh, so and so's doing this and doing this. So the ones that have stayed in a connected relationship with one another have really helped one another not go back to falling in love with addiction again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right, because you need something that's good for you, healthy. I mean, we are a creature that is designed for connection. Our relationship is at the core of who we are. And, I always talk about addiction as like another person, right? That's doesn't really care about you, right? It's the great deceiver, cares nothing about you. But you're absolutely right, is that, and people underestimate that. What is the first thing you do in AA is you find a sponsor. You find somebody that you can call and be completely honest with, vulnerable with. They hold you accountable. It's a form of love, right? There's structure there, right? So if you stay in contact with that person or persons, right, you're going to more likely be able to stay away from the addiction. It's just when the adversity of life comes that we can regress back to those old coping mechanisms, really, instead of realizing, well, what I need to do is lean in more to my community and get more support. So that's one of the things that I teach again in this book, as kind of the four growth codes of like what's happening with me spiritually, emotionally, physically, and relationally, to re-engage through the adversity, right? To actually come out stronger than where I was before, right? So using that as momentum, but not neglecting any of those four dimensions, and the connection, the relationship one at a higher level is just about that. It's being fully aware, like, Barbara, I love you for who you are without judgment. I see you for who you are. I love you for who you are, right? I'm not trying to change you. I'm just here. I care about you, right? And to allow that to be the place of a healthy relationship, right? Because usually that's what's missing in grief, is we haven't found that safe community where we can just take it off and still be loved, and what we call that unconditional love, right? And that place of safety, once we have it in community, that's a place of healing, right? And this is something that it's not new, in regards to like culturally and ethnically, like a lot of tribal communities. What do? Like they realize when one person is sick, everybody shows up. They dance, they sing, they celebrate together, right? It's a healing of that person who's part of their entire nervous system, right? And like I said, like our culture sadly has moved into this very isolated, independent, especially for men. We really have not done well with men in regards to learning, keeping social connections. Become fathers and then we're all by ourselves, right? It's this great friendship crisis among men. So and that's why I would argue that a contributing factor of why men who are older have higher suicide rates than the general population as they age, because there's more and more isolative, and they usually have more and more health conditions because they've dealt with a lot more trauma and their nervous systems are not as good, versus women. Again, this is a broad statement, where there tend to be more sense of community. There's permission to talk emotionally. If you have a safe group of women, it's okay. And so in that regards, I think women will offend Bell. Now, mind you, there are other statistics that if you add in other layers, like my sister, she's a nurse. So when you're a healthcare provider, when you have certain other aspects that come on that you're more exposed to trauma, those risks begin to shift, right? Which means we need to do more for certain populations. Back to the very basic stuff of who we are when it comes to taking care of our mind, our community, and our health. And giving better access to care and reducing access to things that can be lethal to us. So anyways, a little bit tangent on that. I'll take a squirrel on the side, but that's.
So I think one of the paradoxes of losing someone that you care deeply about is everyone everywhere is saying you just need to go get some support. You need to be with people. That oxytocin connection will heal you. Well, it was attaching to a human that got me in this trouble in the first place. So I attached to this human. They're gone. You want me to go hang out with some more so they can leave? So it's this weird little paradox of getting people to want to form a deep enough connection with someone else, not a new partner, but support people. Like, no, not happening, never attaching to anyone again. Or they run out and attach to someone without having the vaguest idea what they're like. And I treat a lot of women who wake up 2 years later, now ready to start doing their grief work, going, how did that guy get in my house? I don't even like him.
Yeah, it's interesting that we'll take either polar in that regard of attaching to something that is unstable just to fill that void, or the outright fear and avoidance. Now, behind this story of mine personally is my niece, my sister's daughter, who was 13, who was the witness, or the least first witness, to my sister's death, which was catastrophic, if you could imagine, for a little young girl to lose her mother at that age. She went into a kind of complete avoidance. She didn't want to connect with anyone because it was a fear of loss. Like, I don't want to get close to anyone because I don't want to deal with the pain of them leaving. Right now, she kind of went numb for a number of years, and she got involved with another young man that she was probably a toxic relationship to a certain degree, very hostile, not in a violent way, but just kind of the codependency of they had a child together. And sadly, this young man, 24 years old, he ended his life just early June this year. And so now we've got, and they had a child together. So to your point, this is the example of trying to find a connection that's an unhealthy one, right? And then losing it again, right? In the same way that you lost your mother, you lost your partner, the father of your child. Now, so no father, no grandmother to this little girl that's now connected to you and your nervous system, right? Who came to you, right? You were pouring all your love into this little girl symbolically, but that girl is you. The little girl that you always needed to love was you first. And that's the part where we skip when I talk about attachment and connection. It's us first, right? So learning how to connect with yourself starts with inside. Like, people can say all kinds of stuff to you from the outside. You're that, you're great, you're wonderful, whatever. I love you, but if you can't re-narrate the internal message of, I am loved, I'm worthy of love, I did nothing wrong, right? I forgive myself, right? I'm doing the best that I can, right? I value myself. You're better to identify then with other people who will align with those same messages that are healthy, right? Oh, this person loves me the way that I know that I deserve to be loved, versus telling me that I'm not good enough. We're like, well, that's the message I have in my head. So I end up aligning with somebody who also reinforces that same belief about who I am. Right. But it feels right because it aligns with what's in my nervous system, until you learn something different, like through therapy. You're like, who is this person? I don't even like them. Right. Because I've started to now like myself, and I've got somebody who I don't like around who is taking advantage of me. So when you have to be really find like those safe places, people to connect with, but you have to become the first safe person. right? To understand
And
what the
that's
impact is meant.
so hard. So this is a great segue to what do you do specifically? So when someone comes to see you, how do you help them? So my channel is called The Journey of Grief, Becoming Us About Them. It is no small task. And so how do you begin that journey with your clients and move them along to discovering that awesome person they are that was created to be shiny and amazing and get them to go pick boyfriends?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with, like I said, creating a safe space with them. And what does that look like? That means allowing them to feel whatever they need to feel with me. They can say whatever they want to say. I like to use the word companioning, right? So the grief becomes a form of companioning. I'm here with you, right? And usually they come in a place where they're kind of lost, they're confused, they're not sure um, what to expect. Like there's a right way to grieve. Like I just want to get over this. So I'll try to paint out a picture for them to help them normalize instead of criticizing themselves. I'll say you're, especially if it's a new loss. This first year is going to be difficult. All the first birthdays, all the first memories, all the firsts, the first holidays. Like I lost my sister on New Year's Eve. So the New Year's Eve, holiday became something different. We're talking about Christmas holiday. That was something different. So like saying, okay, what are the milestone days? Because those days in particular are going to feel heavier because we have this emotional sense and connection to that date, the anniversary of their death, for instance, to say that those are going to be harder days. You're going to have a hard time sleeping, right? You're going to have moments where you're just listening to a song. You're going to smell a smell that's going to remind you of, you're going to feel overwhelmed, right? All of these things are going to come forward, right? So let's just prepare for that and not beat ourselves up about it. I don't want you to be afraid. We're going to get through it. And as they approach, let's do this together. So that preparation helps them feel less lost, to just know what this journey is going to look like, right? If you're in the middle of like a trench now and you go like, how do I get out of here? And somebody stands next to you and says, these are the things that to look out for on the way. So you kind of act up as a guide and say, I'm here for you, right? I'm going to be present with you and just kind of help you walk through whatever you're feeling, right? Let's talk about, what are we angry about? What are you saying to yourself? The best way that I can describe the experience of grief is very much like standing in the ocean, right? So those waves that are always start coming, right? The waves come. If you ever stand in the ocean, you try to go out there, and then all of a sudden, like a wave just hits you, knocks you over, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" You're swimming around in the ocean. You're not sure which way is up. That's what grief can feel like. It's an energy that is constantly. Sometimes it's heavier, sometimes it's lighter. And when you first get hit with these waves, you do feel upside down. So, as those grief moments come, when the wave comes, it's like put your feet in the sand, right? And just feel it. Know that this is a signal of love and connection. Because when you prepare for that wave and you know what it is, all of a sudden you can appreciate what this means. And you might be crying, like, I remember when she played this song or whatever. It's like that is the love that you have with her or them or whomever, right? The smell of that or the memory of this person. I just wish they were here. The wave of that. Allow yourself to appreciate the energy and connection through this wave, right? And so on some days I might be there with you holding your hand while we go through the wave together. And like we're going to get through this. And so over time, you'll notice that you can kind of stand the waves a little bit better and a little bit better, right? The waves don't stop. It's just your ability to know what it is, to ground yourself with it and let it kind of wash over you, allows you to get more comfortable and more comfortable and more comfortable. And what you're saying to yourself allows to put yourself at ease. It's not a time limit thing. the stronger the connection that you have with this person, expect the wave to feel heavier, right? So, and sometimes it may start off of just numbness. That means your body's not ready at all, right? So I'll advise them, be careful not to distract yourself. Actually make time, right, to go walk in the water, right? To go do it on purpose. Don't just be a bystander letting grief wave over you because your body needs to experience this. Go do it on purpose. I want you to go pick up the picture. I want you to go, you know, do the thing, smell the flower, whatever the thing, the memory, tell me the story. I want you to experience it right now intentionally rather than feeling like it's going to hit me in the back, right? So face it, embrace it, express it, right? And then tell yourself the truth of it. And then at the end, they're like, wow, I feel so much better. It's like, yeah, you see, it just got a little bit better, right? You're just resetting yourself, be a little bit more graceful for yourself. So that's usually the exercise, the kind of the visualization, the experiential thing in the body that I, take people through to help them regain their footing in the water. And then you'll find like over time that, a little bit of laughter comes forward, right? In the remembering when you was painful now in the nervous system, it's a little bit of laughter, right? It's a little bit of joy. So finding intentional ways, especially on milestone days, of honoring them. Like maybe it's a Thanksgiving, you put a little place setting for them, or you cook the meal, or we're all going to tell a story about what we remember about this person. Whatever it is, you create spaces for intentionality to connect with this person because just like with my sister, she's with me like all the time in that regard, right? Sometimes she shows up in more powerful ways than others, but because I'm deliberately bringing her forward, I feel more aligned and at peace with it. So that's how I help people kind of walk through the experience of grief into more grace for yourself and recognizing what this actually means in a spiritual, in a somatic, and a physical way, and an emotional way, right? And then ideally help some people around them to kind of know what to do. Right.
That's a great way to do that. That is exactly what it feels like. Like you're gonna drown. I'm gonna drown in this. But I had a friend who came and her husband had died before, and so she drove all the way across the county to hang out with me one afternoon and say, "Now get ready. Here are some things that are going to happen. I don't want you to be surprised by these things when they happen." And she gave me much that same list. But the one
Mhm.
that was so interesting was, at my age, she said, "So most of your couple friends are going to go away." And I said, "Oh, that's crazy. How weird is that?" She said, "Nobody quite knows why that is, whether it's you're reminding them what's going to happen in a minute, or they
Mhm.
just can't do. You guys have always been a couple together, and it's just too awkward and weird for them, or it makes them sad. A lot of women think you're going to steal their husband away. And I'm thinking, I don't even know why you want your husband. Why would I want him? So you're just, that was such a shocker when that actually happens. But a lot of people go away because they don't know how to hold space for a grieving
Right.
person.
Well, it's their own discomfort projected onto you, right? I don't want to deal with this. So you remind me of this potential, this reality. So I would rather avoid that altogether. It's overwhelming, right? So, and that's the advice that I give people too. Like, well, how do I help somebody in grief too? It's like, our kind of corny, superficial response all the time is, oh, you lost someone. I'm sorry. And you kind of want to flip the person off, depending on where you're at, But because that's all that we have learned how to say. I'm so sorry for your loss. My condolences, right? I like to lean a little bit more and I'll say, tell me about them. Tell me their name. Because it's such an opportunity for you to just kind of honor them. They're like, that to me has been the most beautiful part of somebody showing empathy is being able to come and say, tell me about them. What were they like? Right. And you're like, oh, because you're so focused on the death that you forget to talk about the life of the person. and who they are, and in that can bring you a lot more joy and comfort, with grief. So if you lost somebody, tell me, do you mind sharing with me a little bit about them? Clearly there's somebody who's really important to you. What were they like?
That's a great idea.
Hmm. Yeah, so I wish we would do that instead of like, I'm sorry, please get away from me. Let's
Well,
not
and
talk
a
about.
lot of times you don't have time. So it's,
Yeah,
you run
yeah.
into somebody in the grocery store and they say, "How are you?" Well, I can feel my nervous system. Like I can either say "bye" and stay
Hmm.
up here in my head, or I can answer that question. And there
Hmm.
isn't time in the grocery store for me to tell you the answer to how am I. So
Right.
I, fine, thanks for asking.
Right. Yeah, we do that. And again, and that's in us, am I safe enough to talk about this right now? Right. And if you're not, that's okay. Right. You have to say, if somebody says, I'm sorry, again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with people asking that, but if you can make space for that and the person's able to, it's okay to elaborate a little bit more, but if you're finding yourself like wanting to just pour everything out and the other person's like, oh my gosh, well, that's probably not the right person. So then you need to find a place to go do that. It doesn't mean that this person is bad. It's just that they have to hold space, right? And you probably need some space. So if and ask for permission, like, do you mind if I share this with you, this story, right? And if that person can, it's great to pull out the pictures and say, hey, this is her, and this is him, and this is what we used to do. These are our dogs, and this is the stuff, and da, da, da. It's so those kind of elements of time, I think, just help you work through it so those are the kind of things I help to do with my clients too, is let's talk about them, share with them, talk about the things you love, talk about the things that annoyed you about them, right? Just because you can bring it back up to your thought and feeling around it. And there might be little moments where you'll hit those tears and I'll say, what's that right there? Right. And we just got to sit in quiet for a minute. What's that right there?
Yeah,
What's that wave?
it's like let that finish happening.
Yeah, let all that
Let
finish
that
happening. Something needs to come out right there. Good. We kind of hit the little point, right? It's like, good. And tell me about that, and then what are you saying to yourself, as this comes up? Sometimes it's guilt, shame. I wish I would have, could have, whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what's the true statement? It's like, well, actually, I did the best that I can. And, I really didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know they were in this kind of place. And so, yeah, I guess it wouldn't have changed anything. But, I do, so those unresolved kind of missed thoughts how get signaled by our emotional kind of pain, if you will. It's like the little wound that like, oh, let me go a little deeper down there to just clean that thought up. Right. And then later on you'll find, oh, that don't bother me as much anymore. Like, yeah, yeah, I thought that through. I felt it and then I thought about it, So it's just not changing thoughts, it's actually feeling it first and then getting into the thought and re-shifting ourselves, right? So it's raising our consciousness of what it is, because like I said, feelings don't really have um a real word character to them, right? um we just try to label them in some kind of way, but expression is the key. That's why dancing doesn't quite, you can watch somebody dance and it makes you feel something like that. That's different. You can see the sunset and it makes you feel something. You hear a song and it makes you feel something. A certain vibration, a smell can bring about a feeling, right? So using the nervous system, the sensations up to bring those feelings up, and then layer on the right thoughts as those sensations expose what's going on, right? But it is a
Right.
form of energy that can transform us, right? Can help heal us, can create momentum, and realize that the grief can create actually depth of connection, because now we awaken out of it and we start to appreciate other people in our lives more. And that's the beauty of it. And then in that, we have more empathy. I'm giving you from abundance and rather than from the place of avoidance, right? And I know how to care for myself now, right? And that's the work that I've been focused on over the last several years now, but I definitely delayed it for a while. I got focused on, let me just fix the healthcare system. Until I wrote that first book, I finally sat down with all of it and I just kind of poured all of it down.
Yeah.
And I was even scared to release it. I'll be honest with you. That first, I was like, I don't know if I can put this out in the world. What are people going to think? What are they going to do? And I was like, you know
Yeah.
what?
Oh no, they're gonna find out that you're not magical.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm taking off, so, and then I realized like, oh, wow. And then when I started getting people who were, who really cared about that, they were like, oh, wow, I had no idea. I didn't know that this meant this and that and all you've been through. And I was like, wow, if they're giving me compassion and I'm giving compassion for myself to do something so vulnerable, I was like, this is pretty awesome, right? So I was like, well, let me figure out how to do more of this. How do I go deeper with this? Right? What else is left undone? And that's been the place where I found growth, and then helping people in this new book kind of actually break down those principles for themselves. Um, so that's my work that I do, and I try to bring that forward for myself first, and then whoever I'm talking to, or because I see there's a lot of need for that. There's a lot of fear and loss
Absolutely.
and grief, and it shows up in different ways for sure.
Well, you've done your share of changing the world, trying to make it a better place for all of us. That's amazing.
Thank
A
you
lot of
so
us have hopes and dreams, and other people just jump up on the horse and ride off into the battle.
right.
So, what would you like to leave us with if nobody watched anything that we did and you could just give them 1 minute? If you carry this away, I'll feel like I did a good job here.
um, Understand and build the best relationship with time that you possibly can, to be present in the moment with yourself and with people around you. When we are in the past, looking back in regret, we get pulled away into the past, into the place of depression and regret. And we're not supposed to live there. We can only move forward. And when we have a relationship with time where we go too forward, too fast, you're way ahead of yourself. It adds a whole lot of fear and worry and anxiety that's unnecessary. So my message is to learn to love that time is relative, that when you come into the present moment of where you are right now, you'll find peace, you can find gratitude, right? And you can appreciate the connection with everyone around you, beginning with yourself. So don't let time put you in an abusive relationship. It's relative. And so that's what I would ask people to do.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me and sharing so much of your personal story, but also your work and the ways that you really, really changed things for other people. And I'm very grateful and honored to have spent this time with you. And
I feel like the right people show up to share, and I'm just grateful for you making time. Hopefully, we'll get to do more of these type of things. If any of your audience is, interested, again, the name of the book is Healing the Impoverished Mind. It's my first book, Building Resilience Through Adversity. And my second book, again, is Resilience Between Pain and Purpose, featuring the growth codes. And if people want to follow me on social media, it's Dr. Marlon Rollins, MarLollins, on all social medias and my website. So, uh,
and I'll be sure to put all that in the notes after the meeting because I finally learned how to do that.
yeah,
And
right. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, we got to do all the things to reach the people. So thank you for helping me reach a few more. And I wish you well on this podcast you're doing. Is much needed. Um, yeah, because grief leaves a lot of people stuck and not sure how to participate in life again. And so thank you again for having me.
thank you very much.